Einstein said that if he had an hour to work on a problem, he would spend 55 minutes trying to understand the problem and only 5 minutes coming up with a solution. And I think this is a very important maxim for entrepreneurs and innovators, because too often we go right into the idea of solving the problem. And that's because a lot of innovators are very solutions oriented and they really enjoy the process of creating something new. But if you really want to create something valuable, something that's impactful, you need to take a step back and think more critically about the problem that you're trying to solve. And I like to differentiate two different kinds of problems. There's complicated problems and complex problems. Now, anyone working in social impact, social enterprises, social innovation is going to be dealing with complex problems. But in order to understand what a complex problem is, let's start with what a complicated problem is. So I think about complicated problems as problems that you can clearly define the boundaries. So you can say, yes, this is part of the problem and this is not part of the problem. And those boundaries stay fairly static over time. So there's not a lot that's changing in a complicated problem. And complicated problems also follow a fairly clear set of rules. And a lot of those rules don't change very much over time. So I think of a lot of engineering problems as complicated problems. There are clearly defined boundaries. Those boundaries don't necessarily change a lot over time. And the rules are fairly straightforward. Now, complex problems are very, very different. We can think of things like climate change or gender inequality as complex problems. These are problems that don't have very clear boundaries. There's a lot of gray area in what may be and may not be part of the problem. And those boundaries and the problem itself changes a lot over time. What we understood as climate change 10 years ago is very different than what it is today. What we understand about gender inequality today is going to be very different than what we understand about it in a year's time. So complex problems are constantly changing and evolving. And there are no clear sets of rules because whatever happens within a complex problem affects itself. And so the rules are constantly in flux. So as an innovator working with a complex problem, it's absolutely necessary that you understand what the problem is. Because you have to intimately understand what problem you're trying to solve. And you have to be able to follow how that problem changes over time. So don't be in a hurry to try to solve the problem. Try to understand what the problem is. And you have to go beyond just the superficial aspects of the problem. And the way I do that is with an activity called the Iceberg Challenge. Now, the Iceberg Challenge is based on the idea that our understanding of the problem only represents the very tip of the iceberg, and that there's actually a lot more to the problem that's underneath the water. And the way we probe that, the way we investigate that, and the way we try to understand the complexities of the problem is by asking a very, very simple question. Why is it a problem? So you can do this individually or in teams, but you start off with a basic statement of your problem. So let's just take a silly example to start off with. I had a hard time waking up this morning, and so I'm a little bit tired right now. That's the tip of the iceberg. So we have to ask ourselves, why am I tired? Well, last night I got to bed really late. So that's one explanation. Now we turn that into the new problem. So we ask ourselves, why did I get to bed late last night? And the answer to that question is, I had to work late last night. Now that becomes the new problem. Why did I have to work late last night? Well, I worked late last night because there were some things that I had to do earlier in the week that I didn't get done. Now that becomes our new problem. Why didn't I get the things done that I had planned on doing earlier in the week? So we ask, why is that a problem? Well, me not getting things done earlier in the week is a problem because I was procrastinating. So then we can turn that into a new problem. Why is my procrastination a problem? It's a problem because it causes me a lot of stress because I'm afraid if I don't meet my deadlines, then it'll have an impact on myself, my career, and my professional relationships. So that's what you're going to do, but focusing in on the problem that you want to solve. Why is it a problem? Then take that answer, make it into your new problem, and ask, why is that a problem? Take that answer, make it into a new problem, ask, why is that a problem? Continue this process till you have a chain of at least 5 problems. And those 5 problems represent what's underneath the water. Because now you've thought more critically about not only the superficial aspects of the problem, but what that problem is related to. What are the other key issues that are surrounding that problem? Now, once you have these developed as a brainstorm, you can then start to look at them more critically, and you can decide which of these problems make the most sense to lean into and to continue exploring further. So even if you've already come up with a solution, it's worthwhile taking a step back and trying to understand the problem from a different perspective. Because in doing so, you're going to be able to understand even better how your problem solves complex challenges. This video is sponsored by Equals EU, Europe's regional partnership for gender equality in the digital age. Equals EU has received generous funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program.